Rum bum bum bum, rum bum bum bum, rum bum bum bum. One of my favorite songs, "The Little Drummer Boy." Yeah, Christmas is upon us, and I'm going to try to share a little bit about what it means to be a Christ, what Jesus went through to go to become the Christ, and we'll make that our discussion this Christmas Eve. It, Minnesota weather came to Texas, and it is burr cold. Uh, but the north winds have the sand so far back that it's almost around the end of the jetties, and you can actually walk all the way out there and do some sand dollar hunting and some shark tooth hunting and maybe score some real gems. But so we might be ended up doing that a little bit later. So this is all going to tie together where East meets West, where we fuse the thoughts of the inner and the outer. I guess the way to start it is that you can't have a center without a periphery, right? If you have a circle, then you'll have the periphery, and then there will be a center to the circle. But if you don't have, if the circle doesn't exist, you have to have one to have the other. So they're both dependent on each other. But what's happened in our lives is that we've lived on the periphery. Um, this ego self, or self consciousness, you could call it. Anytime you're aware of your self consciousness of yourself, then the ego is basically there. What I mean by self consciousness, I explained it in my other video, but it's kind of like when you're alone and nobody's watching, you act a certain way. You can relax, you can be childlike, you can be silly, you can do whatever you want, and nobody's watching, and that's your true self. And when other people are watching, then your attitude changes, your demeanor changes, and you act a different way. Well, that's self consciousness. And self consciousness is all about the others. It's always about uh, putting on an act for the others so that they will either respect you or do whatever you think might happen. But when it comes to spirituality, then the whole thing has to change. You can't live on the periphery. Let's put it like that circle we were talking about. So the, if you draw two lines through the circle, through the center of the circle, um, at the periphery, the two lines are in different places. They're divided, and the way it is with the ego is that you live on this periphery divided. You're not whole. You're not one. But if you turn around and face the center of the circle, and then travel, take your mind's journey from the periphery to the center, then you become one again. You become whole. Um, so at the periphery, your self consciousness, and it's always divided. There's always two, and to become a Christ, uh, Jesus had to go in and merge into the one, merge into the Father, merge into the whole. And I guess you want to say, well, is there an inside? Is there an outside? Is there where does the demarcation start? We don't know. What we know is that there is no inner and there really is no outer. And it's a journey we take. It's a journey in the way that um, we take things from the outside, like food and air and all these other things, and we assimilate them. They become a part of our system. Um, I know I'm getting off subject a little bit, but when I bring this all together, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So, food becomes blood when we accept it, and it fuses into our system. And then blood becomes bioenergy. Bioenergy is this unique force that's radiating within inside of us. And then bioenergy becomes thinking. And thinking, in a way, becomes thoughts and feelings. And we keep digesting more each level, and it gets more subtle and more subtle. And when thinking is very subtle, it becomes bioenergy, which is even more subtle. Then we become the witness. And the witness is the energy from that was once food is now at some of the highest levels, and it's very subtle. But there's still two there, right? There's this division still that's kind of reaching out towards the periphery. Um, of course, we take food from the outside and we bring it inside of ourselves, and it provides us and sustains our lives. But it goes higher than that, right? It goes deeper than that. So follow me on this journey. Okay, so the witness, basically, when you are aware and you're conscious, not self-conscious, but conscious, it's the end of the duality. Okay, um, the witness is still a subject and an object, but when the subject and the object disappear and you dissolve into even a higher, uh, more subtle energy, eventually you come to the center. And at the center, you just merge into the one. And like I said, love is very close to the center. Love, I mean, you could say love is kind of the center, but there's still a subject and and an object. So your awareness, you're not home yet. You're not the Christ yet. Even though God is love, and love is a very beautiful thing, there's still a duality between love and hate. It can exist. So you have to go deeper. The journey's not over yet. You have to go deeper and dissolve even more. And in the end, when you get to the very center of the circle, the last jump uh, is into basically what seems like nothingness, but in a sense, it is wholeness. So it is both. You won't experience anything because you when you dissolve at the center, you don't exist anymore. You in a way dissolve into existence, and as you dissolve into existence, existence dissolves into you. There's no more duality anymore. The when Jesus meets God, and then Jesus when you meet God, you can't maintain a ego. Of course, you can't maintain an individuality. That's why the Christ was born at that moment. The Christ is born because the duality ends. There's a oneness. Um, so I guess that's the spew on how Christ evolved or evolves from Jesus from being man into changing into and becoming the Christ. But then there is just God. The Christ is God. They merge together. They dissolve into each other. And I mean, it's taken me many years in my life to absorb this teaching and to understand it and not just believe, but basically know and experience it myself, how this duality ends. Um, I mean, we go through almost our whole lives. Hold on just a sec. Excuse me. We go through our whole lives living in this dualistic existence. And we don't know that the ego is bad because in the beginning of our lives, we need the ego. But eventually, when you go spiritually, when you move the energies into the more subtle and more subtle and more subtle nuances, into raising this energy upwards, then there's no room for two. At the very peak of the mountain, I found this out when I went to Breckenridge. The first year I went to Breckenridge, it's quite a journey to get to the top of the mountain of Breckenridge. And bear with me because I won't get too far off subject, but this is a cool story. So you ride a I guess a quad lift up to a certain point, up to the tree line. Then there's a dual chairlift that takes you up a little bit higher. And then there's what they call a T-bar that takes you up a couple hundred more feet. But it's only so far the T-bar can take you. And in a way, there's only so far society can take you to. It can take you to the top of with a T point, but the rest of the journey you have to make on your own. And as you get higher and you get higher, it's harder to breathe. You can't carry a lot of stuff with you, so you start dropping off items that you feel you can't take with you, because the journey to the top of the mountain is excruciating. And because there's little oxygen, I was only able to climb like 20 feet at a time. And then I'd have to stop and catch my breath and catch my breath. And of course, coming from a sea level place like Galveston, you know, it's quite a undertaking. I could have gotten oxygen sickness or something, and things could have gone really bad. But I was pretty young back then, and I had the energy to do it. And I wanted to get to the top of that mountain so bad, just to, I don't know, just to experience it, just to. I wanted to, of course, jump off into the big powder bowl that's set up and everything at the top of the mountain. But I finally reached the top. It took me probably 4 hours to climb a couple hundred feet. But I was persistent and I made it to the top. And man, when you get to the top, the view is astonishing. I mean, only those that have been up there can know the beauty of what it means to be at the mountaintop. But at the very peak, like I said, it's very small. And the peak at Breckenridge, there's a few people. They have a fire pit actually set up at the top of the mountain, so you can warm yourself up if you want. And there was this old couple sitting around the fire pit, like they, I don't know what time they climbed up there, but they're just sitting up there and enjoying themselves, having a great time. But a peak experience is just that. There's not a lot of room. There's not a lot of oxygen. And in a way, a realization comes that applies to your spirituality too, is that eventually you're going to have to slide down and go back to the valley. You can't stay up at the mountaintop forever. You can't bring enough food. It's this impossibility. And in a way, heaven is kind of like that too. That God is the peak. God exists at the peak, or at the very center of the circle. The center, of course, a mountain basically is circular at the base. So in a way, it's just a pointy cone, and at the very top is where God exists. But what's cool is that if you notice that, like the spokes of a wheel, and like I said, you can make two lines that cross each other and hit the center. But if you draw a bunch of lines, that all the lines, when they come to near the center, blur into one. So you can't make the difference about if you go out just a little ways in each direction. The oneness seems to be still there. You're so close to that center. You're so close to godliness that you don't feel any separation anymore. But anyway, so this mountainous experience, one thing I found in life is that you can make a journey up to the mountain many, many, many times to be with God spiritually, to experience what it means to be up there in the grandeur of seeing all the other peaks. And that's the beauty. One of the beautiful things about being in the mountaintop is you can see all the other peaks for miles and miles around. And that's why they say it takes one to know one, meaning that your journey in life, no matter what you do, whether it's alcoholism or anything bad, or anyway, if you do something once and you experience it, then only that kind of person can know that you've another person that has shared that experience can know what you're talking about. And the same applies to spirituality at the highest level, is that once you've made it to the peak, once you've gone through through to the witness, from awareness, from love, from food, all the way up to love to the witness, from awareness, and then the final jump, there's just one more jump into nothingness. But like I said, nothingness is wholeness, but there's no duality anymore. The duality doesn't exist. So um, don't be afraid of it. uh, Embrace it. When you go to bed at night, you dive into it. I think every single night when we go to sleep, we dive into this nothingness. We open ourselves up and allow ourselves to rest. We become vulnerable at night, and I think that's why nights are scary for young children and everything, because we become vulnerable. We have to enter into this, and of course that is a reminder of all about the different dimensions that we go through. I mean, in a sense, when you're taking food and it turns into blood, in a way, that's a certain dimension, because that's something that has to be experienced and known. And when blood turns into marrow, and blood turns into feelings and thinking, and blood turns into the heart, um, it's a dimension that we go through. And each chakra that we talk about, these 7 chakras that exist in our system, those are different dimensions that we uh, experience and go through. Anyway, anyway, this is your Christmas special. I like my special. um, Thank you for watching, and much love and aloha's to everybody. Stay warm out there. I hope your pipes didn't freeze this time. And I spent a little time. I got the rubber pipe insulation all over my outside line, and then I took a wetsuit and I wrapped up the wetsuit all the way around it. And our pipes are fine so far. Knock on wood, right? So anyway, I think the freeze is almost over for us. It should warm up tomorrow for Christmas Day, and just be a beautiful day. And hopefully you get to spend it with dear loved ones, and if not, uh, check in on them and make sure they're okay, and give love to everyone out there. And blue skies to all you skydivers, and aloha, and God bless to everybody. And you know, take what I say with a grain of salt. And I mean, please try to understand that um, I catch myself, and when ego tries to come in the back door, like if I make this recording and I feel good about this recording, I have to be careful to not let it um, create a back door for the ego to come back into my life. So you just become aware, and you just keep watching. And then with that awareness, you'll always catch the ego trying to do something. And like I said, when the ego exists, there's no God. But when there's no ego, then God only exists. So drop that ego, have a Merry Christmas, and take care of yourselves. Aloha.